Today I'll be speaking on the theme of women, war and peace in the land of jewels. The reason land of jewel is Manipur, where I come from, is known as the land of jewels, literal translation from Sanskrit, land of jewels. I will be reading out from Meckley, a historical fiction that I wrote many years ago. And then what I will do in today's presentation is to look at how the whole concept of how in one of India's most diverse, ethnically diverse regions and one of the most violent regions, how women, our mothers, our grandmothers, actually worked at non-violent techniques to confront the conflict and to bring peace. So I'll be reading out from my book at the same time juxtaposing between the reality of what's happening in current Manipur. Yeah. This is my book, Meckley. This picture I took with a Pentax camera of a rice field. So if you want to envisage what is Manipur, it's surrounded by, it's a beautiful lush green valley. It's golden because the rice is ripening and surrounded by 9 mountain chains. So this is Manipur. And these are lithographs of 19th century Manipuri people as drawn by the British ethnographers. Yeah. I start my reading from Meckley with the following words. History and our present lives and history, are they related? As time weaves our history and history weaves our present lives, we all get woven. History and our present lives and history. That's how I started the beginning of my book, just to give an idea of, as a young woman growing up in Manipur, I was trying to understand what was happening in my region. And this book, Meckley, I wrote based on the many stories that my grandfather told me, because our history is not a part of Indian history yet. So I grew up learning oral history of my people from my grandfather. You know, we have what is known as funga waris, means stories around fireplace. So every day at 6 o'clock, my grandfather, we have 7 children, 7 brothers and sisters, and this number 6. So he used to gather all of us and he used to tell us stories. So I learned my history from his stories and the stories that my mother and my father also told. So this book, in chapter 1, I started with these words. I'm a young girl of a tender age with a tender heart and a tender smile. To you today, you mortals, I shall speak and you will listen. So the reason that I wrote this book is because in my area, we don't have proper books. Like we have books, but it's not in a way which is beautiful and soft to touch and wonderful to look at, that you find books that I later discovered in life. So I wanted this book to appeal. That's why even the cover, when I designed it, I wanted to make it appealing to the younger generation so that they could also read through this book the stories my grandfather told and to claim their heritage, their history themselves. Okay. This picture is done by a Manipuri woman artist called Binalaksmi, and these are Manipuri little girls, so I thought it would be nice just to give you some imagery. We have beautiful, wonderful artists in my state too. In this book, I started my book with a journey of traveling out from my home state Manipur and going to New Delhi, India's capital. Many times when we live in a war zone or in a conflict area or it's a disturbed area, or even if when you live with violence at home, you think, if you don't understand what's happening, we think it's normal, you see. even violence at home, violence in communities. So when I grew up in a conflict zone, I thought that was normal. The fact that after 4 o'clock, we cannot go out, which happens even till today. The fact that for about a month we couldn't go to school because the entire area is under a military operation, so everything is cordoned off. I thought that was normal. I thought military coming into our house was normal. I thought insurgents asking for food and shelter and forcing them themselves to stay in our localities, I thought it was normal. So the realization started after I started traveling out from my home state region. It was then I realized that I grew up in an abnormal situation. So in this particular chapter 2 of my novel, I had written, the first journey is the most haunting one. Life then becomes one thick fog, enveloping landscape through which one has to find their one's way out. It's a fog, I mean, in literally fog, because from Manipur to reach Delhi, I had to take an 18-hour bus through fog. And this was an old road which the British built. 18 hours through spiraling mountains. If you look down, you'll be in a gorge. It was so steep. So 18 hours you have to go, and then 3 hours by train from Guwahati to reach Delhi. So this was like 5 days was the travel that my father took me from Manipur to be in Delhi. So I remember I wrote this, and because like today's rain, our place is very rainy too. So there's fog all the time. And so I wrote this example. So what I'm going to do is take you through some of my writings and then come to the reality right now. And the interesting thing about nostalgia is it makes you start to write. You know, when you leave home, the longing for home, to want to connect, you know, the loved ones, even time zones change, smell change, the sights change, everything changes. So here in this chapter 6, I wrote the birth of writing. In fact, I started writing profusely when I left my home, though I grew up writing poetry as a, as an 8-9-year-old, but it was, I turned into more prose as I started traveling. I don't know why, but it was the way it happened. So I wrote, the birth of writing is in pristine solitude, in pure love. It is in connectivity with nature and cultures, ecstasy, even betrayal, nostalgia. The birth of writing is in experiencing the loss of a loved one, the birth of another little bundle. The birth of writing is in poverty and pain, birth and beauty. And the last, one last piece of writing I'm going to say before I delve into the reality is, just to give you an idea, as I said, Meckley is the old name of Manipur. Manipur was known by different names, like the Chinese call us Polome, the Burmese call us Kathe, and Ahom kings, Assam kings, which are neighboring kings, call us Meckley. It was an old Asiatic kingdom with a 2,000-year-old recorded history. And it has centuries of culture, and I wrote this just to give an idea of what happened in this, because as I said, Manipur is now a part of India, northeast of India. It became, the British took us over in 1891, and when they left in 1947, then in 1949, army was sent by Sardar Patel, and then the entire area became a part of India under duress, which is called unconstitutional. But at the same time, so that's how the rebellion started actually. But right now it's a part of India. But this writing I did just to give a sense of the history of Manipur and what happened. So I wrote, Meckley, land of 1,000 wars, attacked by the Chinese in the 1200s. Devastated by the Burmese in the 1820s, colonized by the British in the 1890s, occupied by Indian armed forces in 1949, interspersed by guerrillas in 1970s. Meckley, land of 1,000 wars. When will you ever wrap yourself in pristine yards of peace ever again? I wrote this because when I was growing up, these conflicts were there, and as I became older and older, it didn't end. It became worse. So I wrote this, and I said, when I looked back at history, I said, that's why I called it a land of 1,000 wars, because these are wars which never seem to end from those times till today. The image that you are seeing is of the Manipur royal insignia. These are dragons which are put in the beginning of our palace of the Manipuri kings. So you can find this. The British blew it up. When they first came, they blew this up. And then this is a resurrected form. All right. Now just to give, okay, so this is, I thought I will take the first few minutes to just go through a little bit of my writings, and then I will take you to what is Manipur. So a lot of people ask, where is Manipur? So that is Manipur, as you can see, the one in the yellow portion, little tiny one. As you can see, Manipur together with 7 other northeast Indian states. There are 8 other, you call it like Connecticut or New York, like this. We have 8 of them in this particular corner, and is joined to India by this tiny little portion called the Chicken Neck Corridor. So you see, that's why when people look at the map of India, they say, are you really in India? Because we are joined by India where only that little Chicken Neck Corridor, 22 kilometers. I don't know in miles, but 22 kilometers. And this region has 45 million people, 272 beautiful ethnic groups, speaking 400 languages. If you're an explorer, this is a National Geographer's paradise. So even I don't know all the languages in my own region. It's so multitude of religion. So, and then next to it is Myanmar, above is China, we have Bhutan, Bangladesh is sandwiched between the 2 reds. So Nepal is up there in that triangle, that little rectangular portion. So, so that's what is known as the northeast of India, and Manipur is juxtaposed right there. This particular region was home to 4 other Asiatic kingdoms. Sikkim was a completely independent nation-state like Bhutan. India took over in 1975. Manipur, they took over in 1949. Tripura, where R.D. Burman, a very famous composer, come from, he is from Tripura, which is in that position downstairs. So it's a very resource, it's a very rich in terms of population, geography, and everything. So again, just to expand that little portion, in what is known as, so here you are seeing Bhutan, Bangladesh, also so you know where we are located, all right? So that's it. So as we said, Manipur is an Asiatic nation state with a 2,000-year-old recorded history. State was a part of northeast of India, as I mentioned, home to 45 million people. The region was independent. It became a part of India in the late 1940s. Home to South Asia's longest running conflict. And then we have got right now in this small area 72 armed rebel groups and 300,000 troops of the Indian Armed Forces to contain the rebellion. So this is where I was born, this is where I come from. And we have martial law called the Armed Forces Special Powers Act there since 1958. The Armed Forces Special Power Act was a British colonial act which was imposed in 1942 to thwart Mahatma Gandhi's Quit India movement. So it was meant to thwart. When the British left, the new government of India took over and put it on us. So it's very interesting how the different colonial laws are continuing. So we in our banners we write, remove this, India is the world's largest democracy and we want it to be the most meaningful one. Remove this martial law. And there was a young woman who actually went on a 15-year-old hunger strike for this, called Irom Sharmila. She gave up the fast 2 years ago, but she was the world's longest hunger striker. She was force-fed through the nose for 15 long years in protest against asking for the removal. But Indian government did not listen. I met the Indian Prime Minister 4 times, but they won't listen. So right now, whenever you talk about removal of this act, then it becomes like, are you anti-India or pro-India? And I'm like, we are Indian citizens. We are a democratic country, so why the martial law should be there? So I'm not anti-India. I'm Indian. We are just one rule of law. So now, even on Twitter, hashtags, secessionists, so many things for trying to just ensure rule of law. So the tussle is still going on. It's a little thing, but just to show you the kind of everything that the women are wearing, they're woven it. So the area in this particular, a lot of women still weave. There's a lot of weaving culture there. Just to show you, the Naga people here, and there's Manipuri people here. So just to show you the kind of people. If you look at the faces of the people, I just brought it just to tell you, like, when I first came to Delhi from Manipur, I was given a term called Chinky. On the road, men used to like tease me, Chinky, Chinky, and I didn't know what the term meant till I realized it means people with Chinese features. So the word Chinky was given to us, and I was always asked, Madam, which country are you from? And I was very surprised because in Manipur, no one taught me we were different. So usually a lot of our parents take us to Delhi for our higher education, you see, because education is good. You can sit for Indian civil service, for good colleges, our universities are there. So when I reached there, and because all people look like these faces, and so we now have a campaign called How Does an Indian Should Look Like? You see? Because if we are asked which country I'm from, then what is the face of an Indian? So just to give you an idea, so there are Bodo people. These people live just below Bhutan. And these are from Sikkim people. So if you look at their faces, a lot of times people in different parts of India ask whether we are Thai or Filipino or Nepali or, but anything else but Indian, you see, all the time because of these features. And now we are telling government of India, because every television anchor in India has this proper face, like big eyes, sharp nose, nice. They don't look like us. So a lot of citizens across the country, they are not able to accept whether this is Indian or not. And when they are portrayed in Indian films, either they are like like Nepali, helpers in the house, or a villain who cannot be trusted, or a terrorist, because a lot of guns in my region. So that stereotyping and of our people in Indian mainstream media is also something which we have fought for. I said, we cannot do this because there are to this. So I was saying this is a picture just to show you our classical dance forms are a part of Indian classical dance forms. Like we have a very rich culture, history. These are Kuki people. These are the Manipuri Meitei people with their dance costumes, just to give you an idea of the heritage. This is Manipur, as I showed to you, valley as well as hills. Some of these are rice fields. Yeah. We have, if you have been to Burma, there's a lake called Inle Lake. We also have one of the largest lakes in the neighborhood, just to give you an idea. And this is a hill area with a lot of little valleys. So what's happening in the region? As I said, it became a part of India in 1949, and then some people protested that we were never a part of India, so we don't want to be part of India. So a handful, like a tiny portion, and so they went to Myanmar they joined the movement there and started the armed insurrection. And after that, India also, as I said, sent in huge amount of military. So today, since 1958, every half a kilometer is patrolled in my region. Heavily mined patrol. We have, for every 20 Manipuris, 1 Indian Army person. So it's so heavily militarized. And because of the martial law, anyone who is in the Indian Army, if they suspect anyone, if I am an Indian Army, if I suspect you, they can come to our house to arrest, capture, do whatever. and we cannot go to the courts. The Indian Defense Ministry protects any Jawan from being persecuted. So that's why complete impunity is given to the Indian Armed Forces to operate in our area. And for me, as a social scientist, I feel, and who have read the Constitution of India and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I feel that is so wrong. So we've been trying to negotiate with the government of India to let them see sense, but it's not happening. Now, it's not just the Indian Army. We have got our own indigenous forces who now starts operating like the Indian Armed Forces with impunity. They also have committed many human rights violations. These are our own local police who are armed with the most sophisticated weaponry and equally committing human rights violation. We have got the names of forces like Manipur Commandos. They have got this kind of operations happening all the time. And these are, as I mentioned to you, there are 72 armed insurgent groups in our region. And these are images of some of the armed groups with their sophisticated weaponry. These are from the Naga militant, this is the Kuki militant. So just imagine for a moment in that beautiful area where a citizen's life is sandwiched between the guns of the state and the guns of the non-state. Just think for a moment how that life must be. A day in the life of a Manipuri would start with at about 5, 6 in the morning. You will do everything by 3, 4. After 4:30, everyone scurries home because in the night, only the military, the rebels, and the street dogs move. No citizen out on the streets. It's like a curfew. So for me, freedom was when you're able to take a train in a subway at 10 o'clock in the night. You could really sense what it means to live freely. I realized only after having left here and come here. So they are heavily armed. Again, these are assemblies of armed groups, you see. I did a work for International Committee of the Red Cross in which, because we are trying to define this conflict as a non-international armed conflict. But many governments deny that. As a result, because government of India says there's no conflict, it's just a law and order problem. So as a result, international humanitarian organizations are not allowed to enter our territories. So Medicines Sans Frontier or Amnesty International or any of these international organizations, they are not allowed in our territories. And plus, if you have an Indian visa and come to India, you are not allowed to enter our territories also. So as a result, the reason why you do not hear about our conflict is because journalists cannot come and write. And so as a result, this is a part of what I define as world's forgotten crisis. And this is exactly why we are advocating that not just Manipur conflict, but there are many conflicts around the world which you will not have heard. And for me, when I started realizing the kind of coverage that is given to Syria, Congo, Yemen, Rohingyas, I'm like appalled. I said, there is conflict happening in our region also, but how come no one writes about it? No one talks about it. What is happening? So these are the questions that we grew up. So for me, as a child growing up in the region, when I wanted to be a physicist, but the violence which is there in our lives couldn't make me just be an academic. So I turned into writing and research, and that's when in my university in Delhi, Jawaharlal University, I told my professor I want to research on this conflict and violence, and I did. As I said, conflict happens in our lives, in our communities, but the moment heavy weaponry is introduced, that's when a huge collateral damage is done. I never knew about America's gun violence. No, we were so far away, and America was far away from us. But for me, as a Manipuri growing up in my region, I started researching and found 58 types of weapons have flooded my region. Indian weaponry are not very good because it jams. So a lot of this weaponry are coming from abroad. And how come? America may have never heard of Manipur, but the M16s were a favorite with our armed groups. And through my research, I also found out for every 9 M16 that you buy illegal from market, you get a landmine free. So I suddenly, through my research, because I travel across the Indo-Burma border, tracking weaponry routes, I wanted to know, and a lot of women were made to be conduits, particularly widows from very poverty areas. So a lot of women were misused in this weapon trafficking, illegal trafficking in my region. So I tracked down different types of weapons. And it's very interesting that for me as a civilian, I could know this because Indian Army used to have a parade where they could show weapons captured from militants. So they come and invite the citizens to come and see. And the rebels also publish weapons they have captured from Indian Armed Forces. So as a civilian, we had access to images from both sides. So I put all those images together and I started investigating what type of weapons, and this is what I found. These are published in a book called South Asia's Fractured Frontier, which is a seminal research book right now. The image that you are seeing of a lot of ammunitions and guns, and the boys that you are seeing in whites, they're armed rebel groups who have surrendered. It's a surrendered ceremony. So just to show you the amount of weaponry, which is, and this region, again, which was a very beautiful once Asiatic kingdoms, are now India's most backward region now, where the second highest HIV rates is in our region. So look from a very rich heritage to how it has become degraded because of 60, 70 years of entrenched conflict, you see. Yeah, and this is what I wrote. The narrative of small wars and insurgencies is also the narrative of small arms narcotics as weapons of all types and are pumped to fight the protracted little wars. This is what I wrote in my book. Because I discovered that you may have your grievance. Everyone has grievance in life, don't we? But what happens when weapons are easily available? Then you take it and start hurting, shooting one another. And this is what I saw in my home state. And I haven't shared the other one because our region is very close to what is known as the Golden Triangle area, which produces 66% of the world's heroin. This is Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, regions, Thailand, these regions. And this is the very interesting finding that I did was because, you know, poppy is a beautiful plant. To convert poppy into heroin, you need chemicals. So my research showed who was supplying those chemicals. So our region was sandwiched between a poppy-producing area and a chemical-producing country, which is India. So the acetic anhydride was being pushed into our region to go into Myanmar and this Golden Triangle. And the finished products are pushed back into our region again. And whose bags are not checked in India? In the politicians' bags are not checked. They became our biggest drug lords. There are many sitting in the current legislative assembly who are drug traffickers. So this is what the situation of a political conflict has become criminalized in today's time. So, okay, my last few things are, I wouldn't depress you further, but just to show to you that we have lost 50,000 lives in this violence. And many more bodies have disappeared in our region where the parents couldn't even get the bodies of the children to mourn. Because of the martial law, there's shoot at sight. That means if I doubt, I can shoot to kill you. And because of this, so many innocents have died. We have a phenomena called fake encounters. And this fake encounters is a lot of Indian military get medals on the number of so-called terrorists they have killed. And a lot of our young men became body bags because of that. So you will shoot an unarmed civilian, you put a 9mm gun next to him and says, he was found with the weapon when it was not. So we have 1,500 cases currently being examined in Indian Supreme Court in Delhi in a case called fake encounters happening. So many young people. In Manipur, our parents don't want young men between the age of 19 to 41. They just want them out because they can be subject to these killings. Very insecure. the last thing I'm going to end with a positive note, that for me, I am what I am doing this work because of the legacy of Manipuri women. We have an extraordinary women's movement's history in my home state, Manipur, starting with the resistance, unarmed resistance against British colonial rule. So what happened was, in 1904, a British political agent's house was burned down by miscreants. And the British government said, Manipuris must build it, but they will not pay. We don't have slavery in my part of the world. So the Manipuri people said, if you want us to work, pay us. The Indian British soldiers said, no, you will have to build. So the Manipuri mothers realized that British soldiers don't touch women's bodies. So they formed solidarity chains and negotiated with them. That's the first resistance that our mothers did in our recent history. So today, if you come to Manipur, and I hope you will visit us someday, you have a memorial called Women's War or Nupi Lal Memorial. This is the image of our Manipuri women fighting British soldiers. And this is a protest from the 1939 Manipuri women's mass protest against what they call artificial food scarcity created by the British, because Manipur is a part of the beginning of the rice belt area till Yunnan in China. We have got extremely good quality of rice, and the business class called the Marwaris, together with the British, were siphoning off Manipuri rice for export, creating artificial food scarcity. So the women protested against that. That became known as the Second Women's War of 1939. So because of this legacy, when armed insurgency and this violence started erupting in the late 40s, 50s, and 60s, Manipuri women started patrolling the streets at night with bamboo torches. The image that you're seeing is Manipuri women. She's about 80 years of age, but so strong. I have seen activism in its most, what is a form which I have not seen anywhere in the world, through our grandmothers and our mothers. I've spent time living with them, struggling with them, and documenting their lives. Their stories is not shared by anyone, but some of them. So the image that you're seeing on the other side is bamboo huts. So small little humble bamboo huts are built in every locality, and our mothers and grandmothers stay there, and they patrol the streets of Manipur at night, precisely because that's the time when our young men and women are picked up in the middle of the night by the military. So that's the only form, the last form of protest they could do before they can see their loved ones. So here you are seeing lots of bamboo torches patrolling. So these are some of the pioneer women who struggled in Manipur. I know each one of them. Many of them have never been to a school in their lives. I see them selling rice, bangles, dolls. But it's from them I learned what is activism in the most pristine form. They live in huts, but when they come out to protest against something wrong, the bravery and the courage is something that I've never seen anywhere. Again, the women are wearing funeral attire and asking for the removal of the martial law. So again, if you look at non-violent forms of protest, I have told the rest of other women groups in India, learn from our Manipuri mothers. Yeah, so non-violent, very peaceful, just coming, and doing it. So the work, and then later, our generation took on from what our mothers and grandmothers started. So we started advocating because many of our grandmothers and mothers, they have not been to school. They can't come out and speak to all of us, So we became, we promised that we will carry the voices of their struggle and their to the outside world. So we launched what is known as Northeast India Women Initiative for Peace, because currently there are 17 peace talks in the northeast of India, but not a single woman is included in that. So we asked that women are half our society. And if they are not included in it, then no peace process is complete. How can men with guns negotiate for peace without the women who are the nurturers of a community and of a family, of a nation? So we ensured that we did it. And then we took and we also launched, as we said, the Manipur Women's Gun Survivors Network to ensure that we are able to file litigation, even if it's up to a police level. We just do basic things, open bank accounts for women. We ensure that they get a little basic amount to able to start their craft, their weaving, their looms. And some of them have grocery shops. We have built grocery shops for them. Sometimes they ask, can you give us 10 little chickens they could raise in 3 months, and then they will sell it. Pigs, piggery, poultry. So little things that they want to do, they tell us, and we help mobilize a resource so that, and we ensure that they know the art of banking too, because in many parts of Asia and India, women accept their names and their clothes, they have nothing to call their own, because everything belongs to the husband, So we try to tell women to learn how to open a bank account so that their money is safe, whatever they earn. They're able to, so little basic things. And we also started because the United Nations is what I called a global world's body. So I believe in the United Nations. So we started looking at what the United Nations is doing around the world for peace. So we also look at United Nations documents and also try to ensure that the learnings from there. So we look at the Constitution of India because that's where we take our guidance, because that's what it's supposed to do to the citizens. And we look at what is happening at the global level at the United Nations. Because I always say that we have your biological parents, and after biological parents, government should be your second set of parents. And if government don't do their job, you go to the grandparents, which is the United Nations. So we always say the local, the national, and the global. So we try, and I have met friends from Afghanistan, from Rwanda, the Congo, and I'm hearing these stories of conflict and violence is so similar everywhere. So this is what we have found. So we have spoken many times at the United Nations to advocate for what we feel is rule of law, deepening democracy, and ensuring rights for people. So I come back and then end with this. So in chapter 32 of my book, Meckley, I had written, the birth of insurgency is in wronged histories, wrong destinies. The birth of insurgency is in radical ideals, rushing blood and guns. The birth of insurgency is in damaging governmentality, dirty policies and politics. The birth of insurgency is in witnessing innocent deaths, wronged arrests and torture. The birth of insurgency is in hungry bodies, haunted futures. The last few readings. So this is from the last chapter of the book, just to give an idea. So here in this book, the main protagonist is a young woman. So she travels out from her home state. She understands what's happening. She writes about it. And then she returns home. And what happens when she returns home? I've written here. It's called Myras in Meckley Firmament. Myras means the bamboo torch. There were 1,000 Myras in the dark Meckley firmament. What she saw in front of her was a manifestation of a unique women's movement that had taken Meckley by storm ever since insurgency started gripping the state in the 1970s. It was a time when every household in Meckley seemed to have given birth to a Naharol, or a guerrilla, a time when the state was filled with red posters, red slogans, and red chebons. It was then that the women of Meckley came out, converging in large numbers. Nungshel, which is the main protagonist, she looked at her watch. It was 11:45 p.m. She heard the sound of gongs ushering women of Meckley to come out. She lit the torch, and as the flames grew, she rushed out to the main door with the burning Myra in her hand towards the direction of the sound. Within minutes, Nungshel Chaibi joined the multitude of Myra Paibis who were jostling with hundreds of Indian Army men to prevent a boy from being taken away. It was a night to remember, a night when 1,000 Myras lit up the dark Meckley firmament. Thank you.